This week, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo became the latest high-ranking U.S. official to visit China and engage with top Chinese leadership over a 4-day visit. She went during a time of security and trade tensions between the two global giants and China's ongoing economic slowdown. Nick Schifrin reports.
Across 4 days, 2 cities, and a half-dozen meetings, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo visited China with a message of boosting U.S.-China business. But Raimondo also visited American businesses and said she raised their concerns that Chinese policies could make China, quote, uninvestable.
My point was U.S. business needs to see some action taken to address these issues. Otherwise, they will deem it as just too risky.
The two sides agreed to formal dialogues, including about American export controls, tourism, and trade and investment challenges. The challenge that China faces is its own economy. Consumer consumption and private sector investment are dropping, as are exports and imports. The real estate market is tanking. The population is shrinking, and youth unemployment is so high, reportedly over 20%, Beijing stopped publishing the number. Raimondo's trip is the 4th cabinet member to visit China in 4 months. CIA Director Bill Burns in May, Secretary of State Antony Blinken in June, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in July.
We're going past just generalized commitments to talk. We've opened clear, working groups and information exchanges, an opportunity to put the toughest issues on the table and try over time to resolve them.
And with me now is Gina Raimondo, Secretary of Commerce. Madam Secretary, thank you very much. Welcome to the News Hour. During your visit to China, you warned that American businesses could consider China, quote, uninvestable because China's making it harder for them to operate, including raids and fines on consulting firms, travel restrictions, the passage of a counter-espionage law. Did China commit to stop taking any of the steps that you've cited?
They did not, but to be clear, I never would have expected that they would have. To put this in perspective, I'm the first Commerce Secretary in more than 5 years to be on the ground in China conducting meetings of this kind. So I don't think it would be reasonable to expect that in these first meetings they would make any kind of commitments or concessions. That being said, I was crystal clear that patience is wearing thin on behalf of U.S. business, and that China's recent rhetoric, which has been saying they want more foreign direct investment, has to be backed up by action.
You call it rhetoric. Recently, the State Council released a plan in China designed to improve the business environment. It includes promises that U.S. businesses have been asking for. But Beijing has made these promises, as you know, in the past. Do you get the sense today that Beijing is interested in any of these reforms?
It's very hard to say. If I were to take them at their word from the meetings that I had, I would say yes. But again, putting out a 24-point plan is one thing. Actually backing that up with changes on the ground is another.
Fundamentally, doesn't Xi Jinping's emphasis on national security over boosting growth mean that American businesses could continue to face a hostile work environment?
Yes, that is certainly a risk. And as you say, that does seem to be the way things are going. But it's also true that there are many U.S. companies, even iconic brands, that have been operating in China for decades. And so we hope that they will be able to continue to do that. And we hope that they can look forward to a more predictable, transparent, fair, level playing field in terms of doing business in China.
But if that is the risk, what U.S. national security benefit is there to continue to advocate for U.S. investment in China?
Well, our economies are deeply intertwined, and decoupling is certainly not in America's interest. We do about $700 billion of trade with China every year, which underpins hundreds of thousands of jobs in America. So anything that we can do in trade with China that creates jobs in America or helps U.S. businesses to grow and innovate is a good thing. So that, I think, is clearly in our interest. There's also the benefit of people-to-people exchange. When I was in Shanghai, I had the opportunity to visit the Disney park. And frankly, there's benefit to Chinese kids being exposed to U.S. brands and U.S. culture and U.S. Brand names. There's a certain soft power benefit of that, a certain exchange of culture and people-to-people exchange.
As we highlighted earlier, the Chinese economy is slowing and faces considerable headwinds. You have argued that Chinese economic stability is good for the United States, but would it in some ways help U.S. national security for Chinese economic model to be seen by the U.S.'s Asian partners and allies as failing?
I don't think so. We are not rooting in any way for China's economy to fail. You know, people in China deserve to have a prosperous economy. We can compete. We can outcompete. Our workers are the best in the world, and, you know, we're ready to do that.
One of the most contentious aspects right now in the relationship with China are U.S. export controls on sensitive technology. And you in Beijing announced that you would agree to establish a dialogue where, quote, export control enforcement information is exchanged. Do you believe that giving China more information about export controls could change their behavior?
I do. I think that the more transparent we can be about our policy and our rules and regulations, first of all, we have more credibility. Nobody can say that it's, you know, done in secret or unfair or not clear. I think so. We want to lean into the transparency. But secondly, I think it could increase compliance. You know, if they know exactly what we expect. For example, allowing my team to go into Chinese businesses to do inspections. I think the more they know, give them a chance to comply, you could hope and expect increased compliance. The thing that's very important, you know, it's actually not a dialogue, and that's conscious. This isn't an area to negotiate or to have dialogue. We're not negotiating. We're just explaining what it is that we're doing and explaining our expectations for how they comply.
Did they promise increased compliance?
No, certainly there were no promises made.
There are today export bans on semiconductor chips produced with U.S. technology, but there are exceptions to that ban that allow some of the largest chip makers in the world, from Taiwan, Samsung, to make chips inside China. Will you extend that exception?
Case-by-case basis. You know, everything that we do is to protect America's national security. You know, even in the case of chips, it's important to say that of the $700 billion in trade, only 1% is subject to export controls.
But it sounds like you are considering extending the exception that allow these foreign companies to make advanced chips inside China. What good are export controls that prevent American companies from doing that if you're going to allow 3 specific foreign companies to do that?
We would never allow anything to be made in China or done in China that we think would hurt our national security.
Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.